You have a great little story that you tell here somewhere toward the third of the way through the book, I think page 70 something. Speaking of these elites and their self-regard, you tell one story at one point in the book about how the New York Times editor thought that the acting editor thought the next building to be hit in 9/11 would be the New York Times because of this self-important thing, that obviously they would be the next target because they're so important. But the
Yeah.
story I want to cite is you're talking about a state dinner, I think, in the White House with Barack Obama that you were reporting on. The top table was a tapestry of the modern hierarchy of corporate America, seated on either side of the president and first lady, and Chairman Chinese Xi and his wife Peng. I can't pronounce her name. Luan.
Yeah.
Yeah, were the titans of Silicon Valley and Hollywood. Most prominent among them, Chief Executive Tim Cook of Apple, Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook, with his Chinese American wife, Priscilla Chan, Bob Iger of Disney. Each CEO got a few precious minutes face to face with the Chinese leader and used the opportunity to plead with the communist emperor for some special treatment for their business. One of the CEOs who was there described to me the scene that unfolded. Zuckerberg told Xi that his wife was soon expecting their first child. He wondered if the Chinese president might like to suggest a Chinese name for them to bestow on the firstborn. No, he replied coldly. A little puzzled, Iger told Xi that Disney would be launching its latest theme park in Shanghai soon and beseeched the Chinese leader to come and take part in the opening festivities. No, said Xi. Cook noted that Apple now had hundreds of stores across China and hoped that one of them might soon be graced by a visit from the successor to the mandate of heaven. No. And then you say the three no's, as some future Chinese chronicler may one day label the episode, must have created an atmosphere of excruciating awkwardness. First of all, what a wonderful piece of writing. I just love that story. But I also think that in that story, you kind of told the story that you've just been talking about. I mean, who the hell do these guys think they are?
Yeah.
I mean, basically, would they have done this with Mao or Stalin or Pol Pot, or just what the hell? How do you
Probably
see
good,
that?
yeah.
I mean, what's wrong with these corporate American leaders that they would do that? And secondly, doesn't that story just say everything you want to say about what you've just been talking about? It
Yeah.
seemed to me jumped
Yeah,
off.
again, thanks for picking up on that. And I do remember that dinner quite vividly for all kinds of reasons. Yeah, exactly, Frank. That is, that there's this, and again, that comes in the context where I'm describing how American companies, why trust in big companies, big business has collapsed in the US, and because in large part, because they've done things like that, which is that they've put their own corporate profits, their own interests, the pursuit of of the interests of the managers and the shareholders of those companies
Mm.
ahead of the larger interests of the company and its customers and its workers themselves, to the
Yeah.
point where they almost literally, be very carefully, just stop short of saying literally, almost literally kowtow themselves
Mm.
before the leader of, the leader of communist China, begging him to dispense some of his favors in their direction. And that, and I think the whole problem of I talk about globalization in this context in this book. This is, one of the reasons that people don't trust companies is that those companies went overseas, didn't care about, they were no longer American companies. In fact, I used to hear American chief executives talking about they weren't American companies, they were global companies. They had no particular obligation. And they moved in circles in which, they had more in common with people in London and Shanghai and Frankfurt and, Sydney than they had any interest in people in Des Moines and Dubuque and wherever else, or Dover, Delaware, and that, to me, that's a problem. I'm not suggesting that they have to be,
Mm.
of course their job is to put their shareholders' interest first, but we've allowed a system to develop which almost requires them to pursue that shareholder interest
Mm.
through the undermining of the American worker and the American workforce, and indeed America itself, to the
Mm.
point again, and we saw this, with that after its extraordinary performances, when while they were all taking part in these protests in about how terribly racist America was during the whole Black Lives Matter era in 2020, and companies were coming out and demonstrating their bona fides with Black Lives Matter and saying, what a terrible country, spending hundreds of millions of dollars on DEI initiatives and all this kind of stuff,
Mm.
while they were going to China singing the praises of the communist government of China, which literally, by the way, again, whatever America's faults, literally is carrying out what some people describe as a genocide, but certainly mass murder of people in parts of China, which denies people in China the right to express themselves, which demands absolute subservience to the state. These companies, these corporate leaders were going out there saying wonderful things about what a great country China was while they were trashing their own country. That's one of the reasons people have lost faith in their corporate leadership as well.
Not only trashing our country, while doing that, some of these guys selling the technology to the Chinese Communist Party that is being used to not just suppress dissent, but kill people by identifying them with everything from facial recognition and so forth.